meeting of the Huron City Council for July 14th, 2020. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Crawford. Here. Cloud.
Here.
Pat.
Here.
Martino.
Here.
Dyke.
Here.
Hardy.
Here.
Hagy.
Here. All right, I need a motion for approval for the minutes from regular meeting on June 9th, June 23rd, and a special meeting on June 17th. Mr. Dyke.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes for council meetings and the regular meeting on June 9th, June 23rd, and a special meeting on June 17th, as written.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagy.
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Cloud.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes. All right, next is a proclamation. This proclamation is for Dr. Dreffer. Councilman Claus is a family friend. He helped sponsor this, and he would like to read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm honored today to be able to read this proclamation to memorialize Dr. David Dreffer. His family is here today, and I know all of us who knew Dave really understand what he did for this community. So I will proceed. The proclamation, whereas the city of Huron wishes to memorialize David M. Dreffer for his years of service to the Huron community, and whereas Dave was born and raised in Montpelier, Ohio, earned his Doctor of Optometry degree from The Ohio State University, married his wife Carol in 1962, and served 4 years as an officer and optometrist in the Navy. In 1968, the Dreffers chose Huron to start Dave's optometry practice, and is a perfect place to live, work, and play. The Dreffers raised 2 children, Tim and Julie, in Huron. Dave devoted his time and talents to his family, patients, and the community. And whereas Dave joined the Rotary Club in 1968 and helped organize several fundraising events, including the annual Rib Burnoff Bluegrass Festival and the world-famous Rotator French Fry Stand. And whereas Dave served as president of the Huron Chamber of Commerce and was named 1976 Huron Man of the Year by the Chamber. And whereas Dave filmed for the Huron high school football games from 1968 to 1979, while serving as a member of the Huron Athletic Booster Club, and co-chaired the fundraiser for and oversaw the construction of the first all-weather track in Huron. And whereas Dave dedicated to promoting recreation as an essential part of quality of life in the community, led him to initiating the formation of the Huron Joint Recreational District in 1997. The district continues to thrive, supporting recreational areas and activities for the entire community. Dave's daughter, Julie Spitzley, continues his efforts as a current member of the Huron Joint Recreational Board. And whereas Dave and his business partners developed the Wexford and Eagle Crest neighborhoods and built the Southport Professional Building, the Erie County Soil and Water Conservation District presented its Outstanding Cooperator of the Year Award to Dave for his conservation efforts in the development of the Eagle Crest subdivision. And whereas in recent years, Dave and his family donated to the city of Huron 7.5 acres of land adjacent to the Woodland School for future development and use for recreational and/or educational purposes. And whereas Dave lost his life, his long but courageous battle with progressive supranuclear palsy on March 12, 2020. And whereas the city wishes to acknowledge Dave's dedication and many contributions to the city, its residents, and his patients. Mr. Mayor.
Now therefore, I, Sam Martino, Mayor, on behalf of the City of Huron, do hereby proclaim that Dr. David M. Dreffer be recognized for a Memorial Award for outstanding community service. It is with sincere appreciation that this award be presented to his family. You want to go with me?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much.
Do you want to? Thank you.
I just had a couple things to say. Thank you to the Huron City Council for honoring Dave in this way. Although neither of us was born here, we consider Huron to be our hometown. We love being a part of it. I have noticed that since some have learned about Dave's passion for Huron, many have told me they are inspired by that and want to carry on that enthusiastic spirit he had. I think that's a great thing for our town, and I hope we get some people do that. Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is a presentation from the Erie County Health Department. Mr. Shea, please.
Well, on behalf of the board, thank you, Health, thanks for having me tonight. I'll make this quick. I did prepare some handouts for you. So in the folder on the left-hand side, it's just a demographic sheet germane to Huron, actually to the zip code, so some of it might go out to the township. But you can see out of the 300 and almost 40 cases now that we have in the county, we've had 22 confirmed cases here in the city, with 2 hospitalizations and thankfully no deaths. And 15 out of these folks have recovered fully. 7 of them are still struggling with different cognitive and respiratory issues. You know, on a bigger scale, as we test folks, and we're part of what's called the Ohio Contact Tracing Software, we know immediately when someone is tested positive, irregardless of their residence. So, of course, we monitor Erie County, and we've got some shared areas like Vermillion and Bellevue. But for the most part, you know, the first thing we do when we get a confirmed case is we reach out and do a full interview, investigative interview, through our epidemiological folks to find out who this person who's now confirmed positive, who they've been near, what their close contact has been. You know, today we shut down a whole basketball program because a 15-year-old kid had been with hundreds of other kids, close contact, you know, jumping on their back, horseplay. But you know what? The kid was honest, the parents were honest. And that's what we're looking for. So far, we've had really good, you know, rapport with people who are battling this, you know, this nasty virus. And unfortunately, they have 14 days of quarantine or more. Some have gone longer. But for the most part, everybody has been really great to work with. And it's tough. You know, you got a family to feed and you have to go off work for 14 days. Or whatever your situation might be. So just to let the council know tonight and the folks, you can see that demographic map. And this is something we track every day, multiple times a day. And because of our ability to have this kind of syndromic surveillance, coupled with our what's called our it's kind of detailed, but it's an H7 socket. It's an electronic ability for us to monitor the ER, not only the ER of Firelands, but of any hospital in the state. So we pick the 4 around us. And we know, as of today, we've got this spike in people coming into the ER with a lot of the COVID symptoms. So on a daily basis since March, we've seen like 6 to 8 people a day presenting with, the shortness of breath and all the, you guys all know the symptoms at this point. In the last 3 or 4 days, that number is into the 40s and 50s. So.
And that's spread across all the hospitals that you're monitoring?
No, just fire.
Just fire ones. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we know that this problem is growing, so you'll hear it from me first. We will be turning red on Thursday.
Oh.
As a county, we're going to skip right over orange and go right to red. And, to blame a source for this new, these new numbers is really not something we can do. But certain things in the area don't help. A laissez-faire attitude of not wearing masks coupled with no social distancing is a recipe for disaster. So if you recall when all this time, it's just a matter of time before it spreads. So that's where we're at. Flipping over to the environmental side of the city, we have had just really outstanding cooperation and collaboration with every business in the city, whether it's a business that we have a direct regulatory oversight over, like a food establishment, or just a regular metal shop or something like that. And we've talked to every business in person and gave a lot of these same kind of folders out with guidelines in them, when we thought pressing or talking to people one-on-one was the best way to do that, instead of, Sam, if you ran a big company, just saying, hey, go on the website and look at it. We'd rather go talk to you face to face, and we've done that multiple times. I think it's paying off because we've had hardly any issues. And when we did have issues, as you can see in the city, our operators took care of it right away. It wasn't even a problem. Most of it was just miscommunication. They thought they didn't have their masks. They were outside, which I understand. Another thing to date, at least in Erie County now, as of today, we're approaching about 11,000 people being tested just in our county just by the health department. Not sure what the number at Firelands is. So we're proud of the fact that we ramped up the testing supplies and did the community events. We're still going to try to get the mobile health vehicle here in town so people can walk in or drive up and walk in on the mobile unit for testing. But new this past week is an effort for the laboratories that we have to test kits from, including ODH. They're recalling a lot of that supply for ramping up for another issue, I think. And I really don't know the reason why they were taking back some of the supplies we received. So our testing ability is going to become limited in the next few days. I think we've got 850 people lined up to be tested through next week. And we want to get through that, and then we're going to see where we are. But you can see on here the testing events we've had. We've done about 1,300 tests just for the citizens of Huron. So I thought that was a pretty good number based on our population. A lot of people have come and gotten tested. We don't, our tests originally didn't reveal a lot of problems with either having the COVID or even having antibodies, either antibody G or antibody M. So what's that tell us? It tells us these work. And the hand washing and the wiping down and the watching your symptoms and isolating if you are sick were things that people did really well February, March, April, and into May. And that big community event we did, we tested over 6,000 people. We had 4 positive cases out of 6,000. So I was really happy with that. And the antibodies, we only had like 60 come back with antibodies. 62 maybe was the number. So that's what's going on with that. And then I put the outreach clinic thing in there just as a reminder. We'll need to work with you guys in the city and get that back open probably in a couple months at this point. A lot of people will miss it. A lot of people came here for services that really maybe didn't have access to medical care. So those outreach clinics really help. On the other side of the folder is just a little more nighttime reading for you. I wanted the council and the citizens to know we're working very frequently with the school, with Denny and his staff, and all of the schools in Erie County, all the superintendents. Those are just really fun Zoom meetings, you know, for me with a bunch of superintendents on the screen. But we're making a lot of progress. What we want to do, what we want to present to our entire community in Erie County is a unified plan to reopen the schools. And we're really, really close. And Monday morning, we'll have one more where we're going to have our first live meeting here in town to discuss a lot of the concerns and the proactive stance we'll be taking to get these schools open and keep it safe. So I appreciate your time. You know, in terms of preparedness, we have quite a bit of PPE in our warehouse at the health department. You know, our plans are very detailed. You know, we had the big outbreak at OVH where 22 folks passed away, and you know, we're still testing there. We tested yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and then we haven't had any new cases out there for quite a while, for about 34 days. So this next round of testing, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, will be 1,300 more people will be testing. And if those are all negative, then we can kind of put some closure on that outbreak. But you know, I know OVH employs 550 people, and a lot of them live here in town. So it's really important that we know how communicable this disease might be. And you know, if we know people that need help, if you know anybody that you represent in town that's unsure about medical care or what to do, and just give them our phone number, and we'll be glad to come see them or talk to them any way we can to make them feel comfortable about, you know, what they need to do. So.
Yes, sir. You mentioned going to red. Could you, in broad strokes, pick what that means? Is that with regard to masks, businesses required to close, things like that?
Yeah. So there is no green, which would be an all-safe color. So the four colors are yellow, orange, red, and purple. So the health commissioners in the state, we got together and came up with that because we didn't want the whole state to be not penalized because of a problem somewhere. So, you know, the governor listened, and he was against it originally, but then he saw, I think, the merit in kind of picking out these hot spots. So we had to come up with indicators that would turn you a different color. The original plan was for the governor to, if he named a county a particular color, that was done because of these 7 indicators. Actually, there's 9, but 7 important ones. So the yellow means, you know, we're in a state of, you know, being on alert, trying to do what we can. Orange is a heightened state where we actually would ramp up more of our people and get them out more into the businesses, like we did 2 weeks ago. We all worked late into the night, went to the sandbar, went to a lot of the establishments at night, not to try to catch somebody doing something, but to talk to the crowd. So that worked really well for us to keep us in the yellow for as long as it has. So if we migrate to red, it's going to be more of a heightened and an extreme situation where we're really going to push people to use caution. We're going to have, well, we already have the messaging ready for the elderly, for the immunocompromised. We're going back to strong language to, you know, keep them educated. And, you know, if you really have to go to Drug Mart for the thing you're going there for. Can you stay at home? Can you get someone else to do it? And so it's just a heightened level.
So no mandatory closings, no mandatory masks, nothing.
Nothing like that. And if anything like that would occur, it would be real specific for, like we might close down visitors again for long-term care facilities, or if we have a huge spike in outbreak somewhere, a car dealership, we might close them. So, and then of course purple is really, you know, a little more of a panic situation. So there is no method to write fines for people. I mean, I have no way to really enforce that kind of stuff. And our take on it as a board is people who are wearing the masks are the ones that are going to wear the masks. Whether there's an alert of orange or red or any color in the world. And the people who aren't wearing them, they're hard to say. They're hard to sell. But, all we can do is talk about the science of the virus and try to educate. We're out in full force, spending a lot of time in the field. If you get anything, you call me. Yeah.
Kind of jumping from yellow to red. I know when the governor first rolled out this county program, I believe it was Franklin County, was on the verge of going purple. So there's got to be a number system, or there's some qualifiers. How far into red are we going?
Well, you're either in it or you're not. So we've met the indicators that say X amount of people now have it, X amount of people are appearing at the ER,
Okay.
you know, a percentage of people are through contact tracing have this many contacts.
Right.
So there's a lot of indicators.
Right.
A couple of them are just ER-based, hospitalizations.
Is that kind of what's pushing us? Because you specifically mentioned the numbers at fire.
In the last 2 nights, we've had like 45 new cases in 2 nights. So it's really jumping. And, you know, when we don't take Saturday or Sundays off during it, so we're there making those calls and trying to get a handle on it. And, you know, a lot of people are not very worried about the virus. Some of the younger people, they're like, yeah, I got it, you know, I'll be better in a couple of days. And they will be. But unfortunately, they kissed grandma on Sunday. And she might be the one that isn't better in a couple of days.
Right. And Huron County rolled back out of red.
So, yeah, when we first, you know, presented this to the governor's office, we said, can you keep the color for a month? Kind of like the stock market, you don't kind of look at your stuff every day because you'll drive yourself a little crazy. I think we can all relate to that to some degree. So we said, you know, a month is good because the data that we give them through Tuesday through tonight is what they use to make the decision on Thursday. Well, the governor said, no, I'm going to do it every week. And you saw he eclipsed that by naming Huron County because of the migrant farm camps. And then a day and a half later, he said, yeah, they're fine. They're okay now. So we were all kind of like, yeah, do better than that.
Okay. So what will Cedar Point's reaction be to going red? And do you
Cedar Point
talk to them
actually,
at all?
yeah, we lived there.
I went there.
With them, and they're been fantastic.
Good.
And it's hard for me to stand before you and say I have a comfort level with what they're doing because I'm nervous, like everybody else. But I got to tell you, their plans are fluid and their actual plans at work. They're not just these binders of paper. So, you know, and the crowds haven't been really big. They've had like 7,000 people a day. Manageable crowd. Their staff is pretty well trained. We've been there every day with at least 2 people, sometimes 3. We have an office there. We have proactive plans if someone on their staff becomes sick. How are we going to handle that? How do we put that fire out right now and keep the place open as much as we can? You know, we spent a lot of time on Cleveland Road, Route 4, 250, you know, Venice Road, all the points to get to Cedar Point from outside of the county, talking to those store owners about, got to be careful. Don't take anybody's crap. If they come in your store and they're not behaving themselves, you don't have to get them out of here. We don't need them. Make them all sick. That's about the best we could do.
Thank you.
Mr. Shea,
Okay?
we've gotten a few emails, citizens requesting us to mandate masks. At this point, my response, and this will be in front of council here in my report, is that we follow direction from the Erie County Health Commission and the state. So that's,
Well, I got to tell you, you know, if I had to be asked, do I think mandating a mask would be something we should do, I'd say no to that. I think spending our time trying to, you know, again, educate folks into the reason why it's essential is better use of our time. The enforcement is completely
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Have a good one.
Thank you, Mr.
Take
Chairman.
care.
Appreciate your time.
Thank
You're all busy. Next on the agenda is audience comments. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments to read?
Yes, I do. All from one individual, Mr. Ryan, for the road. The first one is, please submit a request to council to have signs erected at all entrances to the city by roadway with the bicycles may use full lane sign, which is an official part of the National Uniform Traffic Control Device. This sign was installed in the village of Huron 10 years ago and is a desperate need for the safety of bicyclists in Huron, Ohio. Thank you in advance for this public service that is much in need for health and safety of all. And Mr. Harris provided a copy of the sample sign, a copy of. Then the next email. We moved here in November from Yellow Springs, Ohio. Name is for Antioch University, MLK Junior meeting wife Coretta Scott, getting her class commencement, being home of Twilight Zone and School of Rock Serving, and more recently Dave Child Governor DeWine. It is also famous as the first village with no idiot, as the news headline reported when it became the first community in Ohio to mandate mask wearing by all within village limits. There, like here, is a community that survives off commerce and tourist trade, but the lives of the locals took precedent. I had tried posting this once prior, and without reason, the moderator did not post. I'm attempting with and without news article again. And he attached a copy of Dayton approving a mandatory mask law. And then next it says, do the hard job for the safety of our community. Implement masks now, please. And you attached a copy of that post by the gathering grounds indicating that one of our employees had tested positive. Canada today rejected the U.S. plea to reopen borders, stating why with the horrid response we are showing. This was posted in the Talk of Huron today. A favorite spot for tourists and locals. How many were contacted and contracted with asymptomatic contagious carriers passing forward prior to today's closing? Masks help the citizens stay safe and businesses stay open. We've had record numbers for the past 7 days of new cases. That's all.
Thank you. And as I said, we'll bring that up for some discussion in the report. Next on the agenda, under old business, any updates on the ConAgra land swap for the Showboat property?
Yes,
Director?
yes, Mr. Mayor, very brief updates. On the ConAgra land swap, we last communicated with ODNR on June 26th, where we sent our red lines to their documents. I reported on this at the last meeting. We haven't heard anything. It's our understanding the Assistant Attorney General was on vacation. We reached out to them again this past Monday, and our contact, the Federal Aid Demand Coordinator, is also on vacation until this coming Friday. So it's July, but we're nudging them along as we can around their schedules. On the Showboat parcel, the complaint is drafted for the quiet title action. We require, the court requires a preliminary judicial report to be provided with the filing. It's a requirement by rule. We received an email from our title company on Tuesday, July 7th. I'd like to read it quickly to you. I spoke with my examiner about completing the requested preliminary judicial report. Due to the county's restriction times, this will take longer than a normal request. They are only allowing our examiner to be in the county building for only 45 minutes to an hour per day. We will do our best to get back to this as soon as we can, close quote. So we can't do anything without the preliminary judicial, and it's work in progress.
Excuse me, quick questions. Was there a follow-up to the allegations that from Stacy Hartley regarding federal felonies that were committed? Was there ever any response back to her regarding those allegations?
Other than what we've so far have discussed in council and that's on the record, our activities, our primary activity was to look at transactions themselves to determine whether there was justification of what the next step was. Our analysis and review did not reveal nefarious activity. And in fact, when we look at the steps that were undertaken by the surveyor that was hired to do additional work by the title company, the title company's exceptions to title insurance, et cetera, everything kind of fit together such that we did not believe in looking at this, that there was some justification for referral to a prosecutor. It didn't appear that there was any criminal activity whatsoever. And in fact, I'll mention this as well. In our preparation of the complaint for quiet title, we learned by looking at the tax rolls that what was known as water lot 1 shortly after 1906, sometime shortly thereafter, it was underwater for a protracted period of time. So that is something that's being contemplated in our complaint is, by way of accretion, et cetera. Now it's back to terra firma, and we're asserting claims.
But shouldn't we follow up at some point just to let her know that we've looked into this and the allegations are?
I thought we had discussed that too. I thought that we asked that that happen. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this at.
No, I mean to her directly. Since
Oh, we certainly could, and I certainly have no objection to doing that at all, volunteer to do it, to provide an update to Stacy. I was quite complimentary initially in terms of her diligence and her detail. She did a really terrific job. But I'm happy to reach out to her, or at least send her an email with a statement as to our status and where we go from here, and I'm happy to do that. If that's council's request, I would certainly oblige you.
I think we should. If she thinks we have
Yeah.
felons walking around, we gotta make sure that she knows we don't.
And I thought we had mentioned that before.
Well, I will make it a point tomorrow of sending her an update, an email with a statement very similar to what we've made here in our council meetings as to our findings and the status.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right under new business, resolution number 2020-46.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Crawford?
I'd like to move that resolution 2020-46 be placed on its first reading and the 3 reading will be suspended, please.
Any discussion on suspending 3 reading? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Cap.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagee.
Yes.
Mr. Spafford, Mr. Longo,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-46, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to enter into a lease agreement with Vega Bar and Grill LLC, DBA I-5s of Huron, for a portion of the grounds and walkways surrounding the city's small boat mooring basin in the amount of $2,720 payable to the city of Huron.
Thank you. Good evening, council. So this is a continuation of longstanding practice the city set in Basin Health in partnership with the restaurant store. It's been in operation at that facility for some time. Last time this was operational was last summer. After the restaurant was closing for last season. This is transition through the business. I don't believe purchase of the property. It's just a new restaurant operator that's coming in. So this is a prorated rate for the remainder of this season. They're preparing for operations, trying to get going as soon as possible. I don't have an exact date, but I know they're working towards that. So, and I believe that the term of this spells out anticipation that they continue operations in the future seasons as well. I'll take any questions. Yep.
Mr. Spafford, does that mean that, is that the patio, basically what they have as a patio area that's enclosed with the fence or whatever?
Yep. Yeah. So that's all actually on city property. That's part of the boat basin facility. And don't know the genesis of how this came to be, but I know it's a couple of restaurants.
Been like that for a long time.
Yeah. And so just memorial it.
Okay, any other questions? Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll for final adoption.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Cap.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagee.
Yes.
Next is resolution 2020-47. Mr. Hart.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the 3 reading will be suspended and resolution number 2020-47 be placed on its first reading.
Any discussion on waiving the three reading? Please call the roll.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagee.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Mr. Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-47, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to apply for, accept, and enter into a water supply revolving loan agreement on behalf of the city of Huron for planning, design, and/or construction of water facilities and designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan.
So this is the funding source essentially as part of the sludge rate project that we approved earlier this year with Kirk Brothers. It's about a $950,000 total after all things considered with design, inspection, and construction of the project. We did hit early on, and we'll touch on this a little bit here in a little bit regarding the additional piece of the project, excuse me. We did hit a little bit of excuse me, and some water. We did hit a little bit of a snag in terms of construction schedule, but actually we are back on. We might have slight delays based on what was initially agreed upon. The supplier hit some supply chain issues relative to COVID-19, but we don't anticipate anything major. Again, just to highlight too the competitive nature of this financing source. It's 0%, 20-year. It's just for the cost of the savings alone. On the interest side of things, beats inflation, so I mean, really it's a nice way to save on the construction side of the project. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Jason Gibney is also here just if there are any other questions, and if Jason, if you wanted to add anything.
Mike did a great job summarizing. There was some small delays. We're not anticipating anything significant beyond. Initially, the goods were going to be delivered this month in July. We're looking now at mid-August, but a 1-month delay is really not going to make or break anything with that project. It is a project that's grown many years, as some of you have been in these seats for a while might remember, so it'll be good to get boots on the ground and actually get this installed and running.
And we're well ahead. Was there a timeline or a deadline or something, or was that just for us to address the topic?
We're already in the process with the EPA as well. They're very aware of COVID-19 type delays, so we're working systematically with that as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll and final adoption.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagee.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Next is resolution 2020-48. Mr. Hart.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the three reading rule be suspended and resolution number 2020-48 be placed on its first reading.
Discussion on the. Please call the roll.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagee.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Mr. Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-48, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to accept the proposal and enter into an agreement with Pogemeyer Design Group for the provision of engineering and inspection services related to the Huron Water Treatment Plant Improvement Project at a cost not to exceed $37,750.
So this piece would be secondary to the actual securing the financing relative to the project. This is the inspection portion of the project itself, the sludge rate at the water plant. We did include within the legislative summary that we did obtain a quote from OHM as well. We've had a long-standing engineering relationship with Pogemeyer. There's a lot of cost efficiencies that's built into that relationship, and as a design engineer, they were able to provide a more cost-efficient price. And so just for the benefit of council, there wasn't a quote that's included within that, but I think the total cost of Pogemeyer is about $37,000. And again, Superintendent Gibney's here as well.
Yeah, for that, in the description here, it says in the amounts of 85,000 and 37,750. What was
The 85,000 was the initial engineering of the project, so that was also with Pogemeyer. We just included in there for historical. That was previously approved by council.
Thank you.
So technically it's a modification to their existing design contract to include inspection.
Any other questions? All right. call the roll for final adoption, please?
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Next is resolution 2020-49.
Mr. Mayor, I move the three reading rule be suspended for resolution number 2020-49 and that be placed on its first reading.
Any discussion on the placement of first reading? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution number 2020-49. A resolution authorizing the interim city manager to accept the grant award and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Attorney General's Office for a 2019-2020 Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor Program Grant Award for the Huron Police Department in the city of Huron in the amount of $7,830.
So Chief Flipper's here in the audience as well, if there are any specific questions. This is a grant application through the Ohio Attorney General's Office to procure new body armor, I believe for 5 officers, correct? It's the officers that are designated as part of our, essentially our SWAT, Special Response Team. So this would be a reimbursable grant, $7,500 or $7,700, I think, towards the total acquisition cost of $10,000. If there's any other questions, and again, Chief Flipper's in the audience as well, if there's any questions for the Chief.
No questions? All right, please call the roll for final adoption.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Next is ordinance 2020-13.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that ordinance number 2020-13, we waive the 3 reading rule and place it on its first reading.
Any discussion on waiving 3 reading? Please call the roll.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2020-13, an ordinance to create a new section of Chapter 1321, Permits and Fees, to allow for the assessment and inclusion of fees for commercial and industrial plan review and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to place this ordinance on emergency measure, please.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
I'm actually going to defer Mr. Green, if you could provide just a quick update for us.
2020-13 refers to, it's a requirement that's put on building departments by the state for OBBC. It adds I believe it's a 1% surcharge on commercial permits only, required by the state. It was instituted this year. So the township building official, who's obviously our building official, he's updating all his fee schedules, and we're doing this to stay in line with this. And he has reviewed the legislation before you, he's fine with it.
Hey, Doug,
Yeah.
do we get to keep that, or does that go to the state?
It goes to the state. Yeah, there's no additional surcharge on it for the building official or the city. It's just a state required and passed on fee.
Discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Next is ordinance 2020-14.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we place ordinance number 2020-14 on its first reading and waive the 3 reading rule.
Discussion on waiving 3 reading. Please call the roll.
Peggy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2020-14, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2019-27 adopted December 10, 2019, to provide for additional appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources and an increase in estimated resources and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we make ordinance number 2020-14 an emergency.
Okay, discussion? Please call the roll.
Amy,
Yes.
Crawford,
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Good evening, council. The following supplemental appropriations and estimated resources are a direct result of the coronavirus relief funds that the city received about 2 weeks ago after the last meeting. If you remember the June meeting, last meeting we had, council approved a resolution to accept these funds and also to create a special revenue fund to properly track these funds in accordance with State House Bill 481. In late June, we received approximately $140,000 from the state's relief funds to use on COVID-19 related expenses. These expenses could be incurred from March 1st of this year to through the end of the year. So we'll be doing some expense adjustments this month as we meet with department heads. And the law director is also going through some of the permissible uses and guidelines that were passed down from the state and from the U.S. Treasury. Guidance on this is constantly changing, especially when it relates to personnel costs. And we talked about it a little last meeting, but waiting on guidance from the law director over this month and meeting with the department heads to determine how to spend $140,000 in relation to COVID-19 related expenses. So the estimated resource increase and appropriation increase on this exhibit is to lawfully appropriate and budget for the revenue and the expenses. Approximately to date, we have about $20,000 in what I would call obvious COVID-19 related expenses related to PPE, supplies, cleaning supplies, and cleaning services around the city. So if there's any questions, I can answer.
Hey, Court?
Yeah.
What happens if we don't spend the 141K, the entire amount?
So there's timelines we have to meet by October 15th. If we do not have these funds encumbered or committed, then we need to send them back to the county. And then by the end of the year, if they have not been incurred, which incurred means actually submitting or actually issuing a check, then we need to send them back to the county. So the process that, as I understand it, is that as of October 15th, whatever money the county gets back, they can disperse it back out to the local municipalities wherever it needs to. So it has to be used by 12/31 of 2020 of this year.
And was the 141 an estimate based on what you guys saw going on? Where did the 141 come from?
No, the 140,000 is an allocation of our local government fund. So that we got approximately about 130, 140,000 last year from our local government fund, sales tax from the county. So whatever money they received from the state, they took that allocation for all the municipalities and distributed based on that allocation local government fund. So it wasn't really just was a number based off of that, so it wasn't ours.
Corey, is this just a one-time thing, or is it just going to play out to see what happens in the future? Then
Yeah, this is just related to the current pandemic, COVID-19. So you're not really supposed to try to plan for another pandemic with this money. You're supposed to use it on expenses related to this.
Well, I'm saying in October, whatever, if we use it or we don't use it, then November, December, they allocate more or something.
Yeah, they'll have to probably pass some more guidance or some more legislation at the state level and county level, but I would expect hopefully that they would consider that if there's more money left over. Yeah. But as of October 15th, if we don't have it committed, we have to send it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? Please call the roll. On
Hey.
adoption?
Amy,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Next is resolution 2020-50.
Mr. Mayor, I move that three reading rule be suspended and resolution number 2020-50 be placed on its first reading.
Any discussion on placement first reading? Please call the roll.
Hardy.
Yes.
Heggie.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution number 2020-50, a resolution authorizing an amendment to a service employment agreement between the City of Huron, Ohio, and Police Chief Robert J. Lippert.
Thank you, Council. So it's in the report that was included, basically the request is for a modification to the benefits portion of Chief Lippert's employment contract, basically modifying the language of what states currently to be ineligible for health insurance to make him eligible to participate in the city's health insurance plan. Take any questions if there's anything additional?
Mr. Spafford, in the past, we've always paid this.
This is a typical cost of a full-time employee.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll for final adoption.
Hardy.
Yes.
Heggie.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Next, resolution 2020-51.
Mr. Mayor, I move the three reading rule be suspended and resolution number 2020-51 be placed on its first reading.
Discussion on placement first reading. Please call the roll.
Pat.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Heggie.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Klaus.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 2020-51, a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to accept the proposal and enter into an agreement with Underground Utilities, Inc. for installation of an 8-inch water main replacement in an amount not to exceed $32,610.
Thank you, Council. So this agreement specifically is for work that would be normally done as part of the Berlin Road Waterline project that we anticipate to be in future funding cycles, roughly 2021 or 2022. The reason we're before you tonight with this request to do this is to pair and coordinate that work with the US 6 Phase 1 project that's going on at the Berlin Road intersection. And so basically, the idea would be rather than coming back and having to essentially rip up new pavement to do with this portion of the work, do it while the intersection is being torn apart. As it is, we did have some scheduling issues in terms of we had US 6 Phase 1 phase out very nicely going east to west due to some of the delay in our legislative calendar and some internal coordination efforts on our end that didn't go quite as planned. We did have to shift work temporarily to the Main Street intersection, but overall still been able to maintain traffic really well. Just kudos to Smith Paving again, just an excellent crew and good relationship with them. But relative to this, none of this is new or added cost of the US 6 Phase 1 project. These are all costs anticipated as part of the Berlin Road Waterline project. Mr. Green and Mr. Gibney both are here as well, just to provide some contextual detail and background in terms of how this benefits the system overall. It's tying with eventual waterline replacement projects. So with that, Doug or Jason, if you guys have anything additional to add.
The underground utilities would be tying into the existing 6-inch main on the south side of the Berlin Road intersection. They're going to be extending it southward down Berlin Road to just outside the paving limits. They're also going to be picking up the 1-inch water connection to Dairy Queen, which is also kind of in that envelope. This will allow for the eventual Ohio Public Works dollars and project for Berlin Road to take place outside of those paving limits. As Mike had said, it's project dollars that would be spent during that project anyway. One of the reasons that this is before you use a separate contract and not a change order to Smith Paving as it would normally be taken care of. There's a federal funded project like US 6, the DBE goal, which is disadvantaged business enterprise. That goal is 7%. Smith's bid is at 7.1. What we're trying to avoid is add this to Smith's contract. There are very few, if any, DBE water line contractors. so potentially put that percentage at risk. So in addition to doing that, by us contracting directly with underground utilities, we're saving ourselves roughly $3,000 in markup that we would expect also if it was in Smith's contract. Won't be any delays to the project end date in general because of this. They'll get started immediately on getting material ordered, and Smith will also have a hand in the coordination efforts between us and the water line contractor to get this work done before they come back and finish up the whole road. Just a side note on Road 6, you may have seen them put an intermediate course down on the center lane today. They'll be back tomorrow in the 95-degree weather to finish that up, and I would expect in a little over a week they're going to shift us all to the inner lanes while we settle the currently on the outer lanes. So, any other questions? I'll be happy to answer.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the final roll. Final adoption.
Knapp,
Yes.
Martino,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Heggie,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Cox.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is city managers.
Thank you, Mr. Artino. So one of the things on my agenda was a phase 1 update, basically just to highlight the eventual modification here in the maintenance traffic plan, and just again highlight and thank the community for its patience. Done everything we can so far to maintain traffic. I feel like it's going pretty well, and it's nice to have a portion of the project completed already. So as Doug alluded to, here in the coming week, we'll be shifting traffic to the internal lanes as they work on the outside lanes and continue on. So exciting news there. Relative to phase 2, we've been in discussions with ODOT over the past couple of weeks since our last meeting regarding the overall design proposal on that second phase. So our current discussion and what we have meetings scheduled for is to discuss the potential for a break in what's called limited access. And so that's basically what they consider US 6 as a limited access highway. Everything from Center Street west to Drive Beach Road. The idea being in an effort to try and clean up what is a little bit of a cluster at the intersection of Jim Campbell, Center Street, and US 6, to try and improve the traffic flow overall and pull traffic off Jim Campbell directly onto US 6 in an effort to clean up and reduce conflict points at the Center Street intersection. We're working on a couple collateral material type proposals that we'll present to ODOT to get their determination in terms of what kind of data they're going to want to see. Making that final determination, either way, just reiterating some of the points we discussed, just relative to the city's financial position, as well as COVID's restrictions on our ability to do a full public vetting. Still just a level of discomfort with the current proposed modification at that site. So still under the procedure that we relate this project and look towards 2022 and the final implementation of whatever the eventual design phase is. So I will keep council abreast of those discussions as they continue. I did want to also touch on another capital infrastructure project. OHM has completed design and just went out to bid on the Wright Beach neighborhood stormwater improvements. So I know we received some input from the neighborhood. So that is currently out to bid. I believe engineering estimate on that project is roughly $95,000. It is something that I believe was included within the capital funding plan for 2020. And again, obviously plans are kind of all thrown out the window relative to COVID-19's impacts on financials, but it is something we at least wanted to get pricing on and afford ourselves the ability to make that determination if it's something that we can fit within our capital planning for this year. I anticipate it's about a 2-week bidding process, so hopefully bids come in fairly competitive. Maybe we can even beat what was the engineer's estimate. So hopefully some good news there. Relative, I'll stick on the capital side of things. We did a couple of discussions with the mayor, ways to make some kind of differing scales of temporary improvements at the Shogo parking lot site. Obviously, we're completely aware of the increased traffic that's been going on Main Street, knowing there's some improvement that definitely needs to happen at the parking lot, and now having kind of gone down having a clear path in terms of some of the discussion relative to Mr. Schrader earlier. We have essentially 2 ideas or 2 proposals, I guess, that I'll look to council for feedback on. One would be for staff to continue to bring in stone, level out the site, and continue just compaction effort. Very, very temporary and honestly relatively maintenance heavy. The other would be to utilize the effort, since Erie Blacktop's already in town, to essentially do an intermediate course, about 2.5-inch pavement over top of the grading at the site, outline the existing footprint of the parking lot, stripe it, and just, it's probably a 2 to 3 year lifespan type deal, but it'd be something to at least get us through. Add parking, legitimize the site a little bit more, improve the sight lines and access at the site while council goes through the process of figuring out what we want to do with the site long term. Rough cost on that, we received a proposal today at $22,000. So it's likely something we could absorb within the budget, but obviously just getting that information today when we get an idea of what that looks like on the financial impact, but just to get feedback from the rest of the council as well in terms of what, if there's any interest at all in doing an effort to that extent. So once we get a chance to digest it, we'll have plans on, or we'll likely have legislation on the next council agenda we can discuss in our upcoming work session. Relative to financials in general, Mr. Swayze had sent out the latest monthly report regarding COVID-19's impact. Overall, still, we are beating what was initially our projections, but I will caution that July was essentially kind of the month that we were really going to start to find out what the income tax impact is going to be. So unfortunately, our initial reports are not coming in as favorable as we were hoping. I think overall, our initial projection, we estimated about 25% annual reduction in income tax. To date, we were, going off the top of my head, I want to say around 6%.
Yeah,
Down from 9% down from what budgeted was, so beating our projections, but again, July's not coming in necessarily as high as we would like to see it, so we'll keep monitoring on that. We did adjust up the annual projection for income tax from 25 to 20%, so still obviously staying as conservative as we can in anticipation of things modifying as we go into the fall and winter season. So, last thing, and I'm sure Mayor Tino, this is also on your agenda. Oh, sorry, I'll touch on one more thing, the Tyler utility project. So we met yesterday with water and sanitary, basically to discuss if there is any possibility of I'll call it a short-term solution in an effort to speed up construction to be able to have the site activated in an effort to meet USGS's timeline should we be successful in the project. Basically, and OHM's putting together a report for council to discuss, but there are some existing utilities at the site in terms of sanitary and water. Sanitary, I don't know that, and we'll ferret this out in the engineering report, I don't know if there's any essentially time benefit or cost benefit to the sanitary side of things in order to get the stuff to the potential proposed site of the USGS facility. Water, I think there is a somewhat temporary solution that we could figure out that might save a little bit of time. Ultimately, again, assuming the long-term development of the site, I still think it behooves us to have the plan ready in place to put together the final utility plan. But just again, we'll have a more detailed report, estimated timelines, construction costs, etc. So for the benefit of council on that. And finally, last thing, transient rental discussion that we've had relative to updating some of those regulations. We've had some really productive conversations amongst our committee. It's been mentioned in previous discussions relative to parking modifications, capacities, regulatory modifications and things. And so very encouraging. I think we're ready. We should be ready for July 28th meeting with proposed legislation that we can discuss in work session and then also present that night for first reading. We had discussed at one point in time considering an administrative moratorium on COVID-19 regulations. After ferreting that process out a little bit more, didn't feel that was an appropriate next step or action. We have discussed internally utilizing that as a short-term measure to implement capacity restrictions, and we're still ferreting that idea out. But relative to utilizing that, it didn't feel right from our perspective and what we thought about it to gain the only ability that somebody has to operate the business legitimately, regardless if we're happy or unhappy with the current registration. So that's where that process is at. I just wanted to highlight because that was referenced in an earlier managerial report. We are also, we had made offer to a successful candidate for the code enforcement zone inspector position. So anticipated start date is any day now. So good news on that front as well. Any questions?
Mike, Teresa Snyder from the Energy Group.
Yes.
Is working with the Port Authority. Is there any way at our next work session you can give her some time that she can give the entire council just kind of an update where everybody's at with that
That's great idea, Rick.
I don't want to interrupt this train of thought.
No,
Oh, you're fine, no, yeah, no, I'm good.
Hey, Mike, I saw in your notes, with regard to the USGS, note about the city backing a loan, and I'm just curious, is anyone talking to the township about also backing the loan, or
So,
joining us in that backing?
that was one of the initial discussions, one of the first Port Authority meetings back, I don't know, Sam, it was probably in April, I think it was, and that request was made, and the township had indicated that they had no interest in being a financial partner in the project. They, you know, whatever they could to support the efforts through the Port Authority, but they weren't going to go to the step to actually do the financial backing on this construction facility.
Did they say why?
Yeah, I don't think they elaborated, but
right now, from what I understand, is because of the effects of COVID, the Kalahari being shut down, and they're only operating at 40% right now. That's what they told me.
Yeah, we're not in too good a shape financially either, though, so.
We'll have that discussion. Make a decision one way or the other.
Yep.
Mr. Stafford, so the part-time code enforcement officer, I'm assuming, accepted the position.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how many hours is that again?
We budgeted 24. Imagine it's going to be a floating scale, and it'll be based on demand.
And then, just a quick question of clarification on for either you or Doug, on the Route 6 Phase 1, over the bridge, the sidewalks on each side of the bridge where we got the grass growing, a foot over on each side, and you got this curb that's like this high. So my understanding is that the sidewalk will be essentially from the guardrail to the road.
Correct.
So there'll be essentially no
To the
grass
curb.
there to
Correct.
worry about mowing.
Yep.
And then, the other question is the curb get built up? I mean, because I'm assuming it's from the years of adding layers, so does that curb get redone?
Yeah, Mark, it's a combination of that and curbs that are just falling apart.
Yeah, correct.
And yeah, where unless the curb is in great shape, for instance, on the very western edge of the river bridge where the river rock and the landscaping is, that's in pretty good shape. Most of the rest of it's getting replaced. So there'll be a new 6-inch curb with a 6-inch reveal. That particular area especially because it'll be poured in with the sidewalk.
I mean, that's going to just improve the look.
And
So
when we
just
looked
that,
at it-
because you go by and not anything against the streets or whoever mowing that, but I mean, it's going over and you got about a 2-inch curb there in some spots and some broken. So obviously that's the reason we're doing it.
We had that discussion with streets and we laid that out as to why would we leave ourselves a foot of grass to maintain as opposed to just taking the sidewalk another foot over and having a 5-foot sidewalk leading up to that bridge. And then someday, that railroad bridge is going to be redone by ODOT. I can't tell you right now what that day is, but we could then widen the walkways across that bridge to match up with that as well. For now, we're just repairing the curb along the railroad bridge on the north side where it's all deteriorating along.
Yeah, that's what my next question is, kind of
Yep.
the bottom of that little wall.
That curb on that north side will get replaced.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I did have one more thing. I apologize for, sorry. A lot going on. So yesterday we had a good meeting with the Tax Incentive Review Council. Basically, it's a joint group of county, city, and school board officials to discuss impact development incentive agreement in the area. So we had an applicant for a property tax abatement, stride mobility, and safe harbor insurance. It's currently a business in the Huron Plaza. They're looking for a new construction facility with 50,000 square foot. It's actually a pretty cool space, but they're talking about a retail as well as some occupational health training, some demo area that patients can actually come in, demo equipment. They'll have actually setting up like a mock house that you can come in and get an idea of what things actually, how they operate within your home. Very exciting project, and the owner is very excited about continuing partnership with the city and has a lot of great ideas of collaboration with us and the schools. So that, the request was for a 15-year, 100% abatement. through the coordination and conversations and relative with the schools at the table, we came to an agreement on a phased abatement for a 15-year period of 5 incremental step downs. First being at 75%, second at 50%, third at 25%. So the next steps from here, the TIRC is a recommending board only, so next step, city council and the school board both have to approve that eventually. Mr. Dwyer, the city, or the school's treasurer, is putting that on their next agenda, I believe, July 21st. And so typical processes, subsequent school board approval, city council, and will also approve that. So I would imagine that'll also be in your July 28th agenda. So it's a good project. And the site itself, sorry, it's on Sawmill Parkway. So Hody actually has a multi-tenant building that's just a few hundred feet in, just past where the old golf dome site was. And they're actually splitting that lot off, and they own about 3 acres in the back of that parcel. They're splitting that, and this new facility is proposed to be located there. So.
I think you said it's about a $2 million project.
Yeah, about $2 million total construction, all improvements. 15 current jobs, with a plan to add close to 5 over the next 3 years. It's my last thing, I swear.
Well, might as well stay right there. Republic,
Yes, yeah, thank you.
we're not, obviously not happy with their service.
Right. So we are coordinating a meeting with law director and with Dave Baker, who's our contract rep. Corresponding with them, obviously, the level of dissatisfaction with the service delivery over the last few months. And we've been having ongoing conversations, and some of the initial issues were relative to COVID, and I understand that. And fortunately, on July 4th was kind of a perfect storm where we had our bulk pickup correspond with 3 straight days of 8 weather over a holiday weekend. Kind of a perfect storm. But again, we made it clear on multiple occasions that there are certain provisions within the contract that require preemptive notification, require local customer service, that our residents can contact the public directly. And then again, relative to keeping city streets clean, and just the frustration on our end is and what I've expressed to them is it makes us look like we're not managing the service appropriately and we're not providing the service to the residents. And so I've just asked them continually to continue to be a partner in the communication efforts. We're happy to help them in any way we can to try and get the notice out to everyone to let them know delays are anticipated. And so this past Monday, appreciate their efforts already improving, getting back to us throughout the day multiple times to give status updates where they're at. They were able to finish their route within the day, and so again, just keeping that conversation going. And I don't know if we have a date and time set up, but the meeting's anticipated this week or next week with Republic, our representative of Republic, just to continue that discussion.
When is that contract up?
Sure. The contract runs through June 30th of 2022, so we have about 2 years left on that agreement.
We do have now.
Well, we have it out.
We do have an out clause. There's I think it's a 10-day notice period on termination. Obviously, just based on the non-coordination that would have to ensue, I would recommend a lot longer than 10 days. We did actually proactively reach out to both Republic as I'll say as a faux retail customer, just to get some market data in terms of costs and service provided within subdivisions in the township, and then also we reached out to Cyclone. And I don't have my notes in front of me, but the answer from Cyclone was that recycling, just based on the transportation costs that would be necessary to get to the nearest recycling facilities, that it's not something they currently offer. And that yard waste is something they're working towards offering, but they haven't set up those agreements in place yet. So their main focus is refuse specifically. And then with Republic, obviously, we know the services that are offered. I'll just highlight the benefit of council and things. And I know there's always complaints about the relative cost of the program. And I'll just highlight the multiple market studies we've done have shown that the city's cost routinely beats what you can get available on the market by 30 to 40%. And that includes a robust service offering that you're not going to get from if you were to contract directly with Republic themselves. So we understand the frustration. We're doing everything we can to keep that service best we can. And I understand, it's there's a lot of operational benefits too to having the contract that we have. We did the entire city collected in one day. We're just our neighbors to the west in Sandusky, every day is trash day type deal. So I get it. We're trying to make a perfect solution for everyone, and everyone's trash needs are different. So a lot of things to consider, but
What are the major complaints?
Major complaints are lack of notification. I know there's complaints in terms of relative cost being too high. There's complaints that oftentimes, certain services will be missed sporadically. Complaints about the size of containers. Again, some people need more, some people need less. Concerns relative to, there's times where, trash is kind of just strewn everywhere, or bins aren't necessarily placed back in their place, they're kind of, and they're going on to the next customer. So.
Would you explain the amount of money we're collecting? This is not a cash flow for the city.
No.
Would you explain that?
Yeah, so we have, there's I'll call it an operational administrative margin that's on top of it. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I want to say it's about $4 a quarter per account. And so basically that's just to cover our costs for postage and administrative staff and those things. But this is not a cash cow for us. The probably quarterly cost per account is $61 from the public, and our charge back to the community is $65. So it's, it's not like we're utilizing this to offset a bunch of administrative and capital
If
costs.
I remember, we're getting close to where it.
Yeah, we're getting close to the break-even point.
We'll be losing money by 2022 actually per unit. But
We did recommend, and something Corey and I are putting together for next budget season, is to take that service, the economic, or the financial line items that manage the service, taking it out of the general fund and putting it within its own special revenue fund so that we can track the financials of it a little bit better.
Would that fall under the purview of the utilities committee if we get that up and running?
I think it would.
Whatever happened to that? We were gonna try to do a meeting or something.
Yeah, we were talking about doing a meeting relative to the substation sale
Right.
NFT. It just, the issue I felt was probably bigger than what needed to be vetted out there, but I still believe that, there is a need to get that off the ground. And
'Cause I think one of the other things on our radar was, the recurring conversation about internet service.
that's one of many. And obviously, there's long-term discussions here about power, obviously the water filtration department is our largest utility.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions for Mr. Staff?
Cool. Thank you, guys.
All right, as far as my discussion, I do have a few issues. Masks, I wanted to bring that up to council. You heard my discussion with the health commissioner. If anybody has any other comments that I can make or wants to go in a different direction, this is the time to speak up. Hearing none, so at this point, I'm assuming we will continue following direction from the state and the Erie County Health Commissioner. All right? Thank you. I think Mr. Spafford talked quite a bit about vacation rentals. There's quite a bit there. I believe it's with, it is now with our law director, and they're putting something to that. We will be discussing that. Hopefully, we can have a work session at the next meeting. Council will hear more detail on all that, and we'll go from there. We definitely want to bring that to the public, and I imagine 3 reading, and maybe have a public hearing. And we'll talk about that in the work session. Okay. I got a couple requests for safety committee, I think this would be. One is at Canterbury Drive, Wexford. There's some concern about traffic going a little too fast and children playing and stuff like that. They wanted to know if we could put a sign up. They've seen signs in other areas of town. They wanted to know if we could put a sign up there. And you heard Terry read, the clerk read the letter about the signs for bicycles. Would the safety committee like to address those 2 issues?
Sure.
Get back to us.
Sure. We can try tell the meeting, however we want to do that.
And I want to remind everybody that our meeting at the end of the month is was moved from the 28th Tuesday, would be moved to the 29th, which is Wednesday. Also got a communication from the railroad. There will be some railroad closures the week of July 27th through the 31st at William Street, River Road, and Berlin. Is that going to cause a problem for our safety forces to have River Road and Berlin closed?
I think the email says that they're going to close at different times,
Different times?
not all at once.
If they're gonna do one at a time, and there'll be about 2 days at each one.
Yeah.
They're replacing the ties on the tracks.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you. Mark?
Mr. Mayor, I had a question. I was wondering if you could give us just a little update on the city manager search, at least in terms of kind of how the process will work from here. Obviously, we're collecting the applications right now, but in terms of what the search committee is going to do and what they're going to present back to us, and just how the process will work, going forward, since this is not something that we do every year.
Mr. Hardy or Mr. Judge, would you like to say something like that?
The committee is finalizing some questions to use in the interview process. There are 4 applicants so far that have put their information in to be considered. I think once we get the rest of the applications in the deadline, then we'll sit down and go ahead and start narrowing down the field. I think we discussed, we haven't come up with a set plan yet, but we discussed maybe looking at a lot of the paperwork and then considering a group of those to be interviewed. I don't think we're going to interview everybody, but I think we'll narrow it down and come up with candidates that we feel hit some criteria, and then we'll do in-person interviews for that. And obviously they will be presented to council in some shape or fashion, whether through an interview process or a board report, a committee report.
What's the deadline, Terry, for applicants?
The end of the month, end of July.
I would like to throw it back at the council members. What would you guys like to have from us? Would you like us to stack rank, say, 5 people if we had, multiples? Or would you like us just to say, these are our top 3, or
Screen them.
just screen them, and then, let's say we have 10 applicants. You want all 10?
No, I'm saying screen,
No, you screen.
screen to the qualified only. Now, if it ends up being 10, but, any number that fly, so.
Yeah, I thought it was screen to narrow it down to
I didn't.
whatever it is, depending on present company excluded. You narrow it down to the top. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 or 3 or 4, depending on the total number, I suppose. And then, present a recommendation. I think it might be good if we, at some point, also had access to at least see all the applications, if for some reason the council members just unfold.
I think they are now.
I don't mean necessarily.
Oh,
But
okay.
anyone wants them, I can.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying now. I'm saying when you guys decide and say, okay, here's our top 3, but if you want to scroll down, here's the rest of the applications, just for full disclosure, full transparency and stuff.
I guess another question that I have, do you want that committee to say, here, this is who we feel is the top versus down, or do you want us just to say, here's a group, and we've narrowed it down? Do you want that input from that committee?
Sure.
Yeah, I think the committee was set up, yeah.
You mean the committee would give their top recommendation? I mean, I don't know if there's a legal.
No, but generally the committee work is doing the things that generally what we're discussing is to cut down the amount of time that council has to address this, and if the committee does their job, they should present candidates that are qualified. I think it's a great idea also to have the ones who quote unquote did not make the cut at least available for review. But I think if the committee's doing their work, they're diligent, fastidious in reviewing those things, and presenting the top candidates to council based on the committee's input.
But if that, I guess not the question, I think, if that's three, let's just say the number's three, they're gonna, here's our top three, should they also say, this is our top one? Or should, once you get to that point, it should be then the council discussion?
Yeah, I think the committee's not the one choosing the candidate, council's gonna be the one. I think, in my opinion, just from the legal side, I think the committee does its job by presenting the three top candidates. You're trusting your committee to do their job, and then from there, I think this body would evaluate.
Yeah, but just to push back on that a little bit, they've been living it, they've been doing it, they've spent a lot more time with the resume than those of us not on the committee, so I would appreciate a recommendation of, I think this is our number one, number two, number three.
And once we get, I mean, the three council members on the committee, so I suppose once we get into, deliberations, certainly that opinion of the three members can be shared.
That's what I'm at.
Yeah. Well, but, I mean, I guess the question is official, here's a recommendation that's, whether it's public information.
Council will ultimately be the one that makes the decision. So even if the committee comes forward and says, this is the one we believe to be the best candidate, this body can do as it pleases.
I don't have a problem either way.
Is there anything else that we should keep in mind and pass along to the other members as far as the search committee? That you guys can think off the top of your head? And if you can't think of it right now, please feel free to email me at any time or try.
Do you think it's a hard close at the end of July, or do you think it might?
I think basically with everything that's going on in our world, who knows? I mean, I know we did talk about, possibly expanding our advertising a little bit. I mean, we've only had 4 candidates. That was one of the things that we need to reconvene and say, okay, here, this is what we need to move on to.
And that was last week ago.
I think the committee talked about, after a couple of weeks,
Trying to
meeting again and discussing exactly that.
With like a week to spare or something in the time.
They had a week or so to spare, and they expand on the advertising. So I would say, I was committee, I'd set something up for next week maybe
Okay.
to discuss that further.
Mr. Hardy, would you like to send that email or would you like me to? I will send that out to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you guys volunteering to take some.
Well, let me know, I have to put a notice.
Okay, I will definitely do that. We'll be copied on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thought we should get a little clarity on that.
Okay, I have nothing else for my reports. For the good of the order, Mr. Hagee.
Oh, yeah, just once again, shout out, kudos to Mike and staff, especially for the Route 6 construction. It's been as painless as it possibly could be. And I'm not hearing a lot of chatter about it either, a lot of complaints, so great job. That was it.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
I have nothing further, thanks.
Not to repeat what Mr. Hagee's already said, but we've got a front row seat for the Route 6 project. Doug, Mike, everybody, our services team, I hear those sirens going through there and they're making room to let the squad and the fire trucks get through, and great job. It seems like an unbelievable logistics nightmare to me, but they're really making it work. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to, again, I want to thank Mr. Shade from the Health Department for coming in tonight. He left, but I think that was very good information, valuable for us and helpful going forward. And also, again, to congratulate the Dreffer family and just express my gratitude and appreciation for everything that Dave Dreffer did for the city, and appreciate the efforts of Mike and Sam and helping Terry, helping get this put together. That's all I have.
Again, I'd like to thank the Dreffer family, and it's a good proclamation. That was very nice, and I think everybody knows Dave Dreffer knows that he did a lot for the city. My next thing is, I don't know if everybody was aware of
police call that was on the weekend, but I just want to tell Chief Lippert that I listened to that. I got your adrenaline going. I just want to let everybody know that the HPD did a great job on taking care of that. And I did talk to a couple of the officers, and one in particular, and told me he probably should not be running at his age right now, but he did. So, but they solved an issue that could have got out of hand, and I appreciate that. And the last thing is, happy birthday to our mayor. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr.
41?
Yeah, 39. You're done? Yeah, I know you are.
I also want to, the Dreffer family proclamation, it was very interesting and neat to see that. Dave Dreffer, I had a lot of good memories of meeting him and talking with him, and that was very nice of the council to do, so I'm glad we did that. I also want to say best of luck to the new owners at I-5. It stinks to go down there and see that vacant, and I hope the new owners are successful down there. And then also, when Teresa Snyder comes, I hope we can get her on the work session, because I think she has a lot of good information, and she's going to be able to give us a clear picture. We can choose this path, or we can choose that path, and we'll be able to make good decisions. So thank you, everyone, and have a good week.
Okay, next on the agenda, we do have an executive session plan for the purpose of addressing possible investment or expenditures of public funds to be in connection with the proposed economic development project. I believe we will have invitees, Mr. Spafford and Mr. Schrader. Anybody else?
Go ahead, Corey.
Mr. Sway's good. I need a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we go to executive session for the purpose of addressing the possible investment of or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with a proposed economic development project, and that we invite Mr. Spafford, Mr. Schrader, and Corey.
I don't believe there'll be any legislation yet. Any discussion on the motion to go into executive session? Hearing none, roll call?
Taft.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Hagy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Cloud.
Yes.
We going in here, we stay here? back in regular session at 8:29. Mr. Hardy left the executive session at 8:25, I believe.
Correct.
Just for the notes. If there's nothing else for council discussion, a motion will be ordered to adjourn will be in order.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?